So for our next and final session before the break, which will be a little shorter than we actually advertised, we're going to address an issue that arose during the accreditation process. So we're back to the accreditation process from ANSI that ANSI CCO is accredited under. And I mentioned earlier that there's an annual review in addition to the 5-year accreditation period. Certification bodies are still subject to an annual review by the assessors that come in and do an audit. They call it an assessment, but it's essentially an audit to make sure that anything that's happened in the 12-month period since they last took a look at the program to make sure that everything is as it should be. And when they came in most recently, as Bob will tell us, they found an issue which they were, frankly, initially slightly concerned about, and that was a disparity between the pass rate on computer-based tests that are delivered through a computer-based testing site, and the same tests that were delivered through paper and pencil. And we thought it would be very interesting to share with the group today just how NCCCO addressed that and the sort of creative way that they managed to resolve it. Just a few words about Bob. Bob Ullman he's currently the Director of Certification and Credentialing at NCCCO. He's responsible for new program development and program maintenance. He previously served as Director of the Center on Education and Training for Employment at the Ohio State University, managing multiple projects involving the deployment of assessments of occupational knowledge and skill for certification providers, vocational education, state departments of education, government, and private industry. Bob, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Graham. Looking at that last presentation from Stephanie, as the one responsible for maintaining the currency of our assessments, I saw the workload that she just put on me. So thank you for that, Stephanie. Seeing that I'm the only one between this and the virtual break, I'll try to make sure that I move fairly quickly through this. Let me take control of the screen here. There we go. Ah, good. Okay. So anyway, as most of you know, our certification tests have written components and practical components. And our written components can be taken both by on computer-based assessments or paper pencil-based assessments. And we discovered, unfortunately, that there are score differences between the paper pencil tests and the computer-based tests. So what are those differences? On average, those taking computer-based assessments scored 4 points lower than those taking paper pencil tests. Those scores are often near the cut score. So as we see, on average, computer-based tests have a pass rate that is about 7% lower than those taking paper pencil tests. And given thousands of exams that we administer, this is a pretty significant difference. As Graham had mentioned, this had become an ANSI accreditation issue. Not only did we notice it, but our assessors noticed it as well. And I can't overstate the value that we place on our ANSI ANAB accreditation. Our assessors are well trained. They go through with a fine-tooth comb everything that we do surrounding our certification programs. In fact, the last time I submitted an application for accreditation, I had to address no less than 178 elements that I had to document to make sure that we are meeting the standard, the ISO IEC 17024 standard. The particular standard at question here was 9.3.2, and that is that a certification body shall have procedures to ensure consistent exam administration. And this is an issue of fairness. So ANSI issued a nonconformity, concerned that our exam administration systems might not be consistent, and computer-based testing might not be fair to the candidates, or paper-based testing might be unfairly advantageous to candidates. So the citation, and they had given us the citation 2 years prior, and we were in the process of gathering the data to address this, and they reissued it last year, or this year, I should say, I'm sorry, saying that researching the differences between the paper and CBT scores and pass rates has been promised. We promised that we would address this, and the differences are substantial and need to be explained or corrected. So the bottom line was we needed to investigate the reasons behind these performance differences and or correct them. So paper pencil tests are often given as essentially event-based testing at training sites. Candidates will sign up for a training class, go through a class, and then a chief examiner is brought in, an independent examiner is brought in to administer the certification tests to the students that were in that class immediately after training. Those taking computer-based tests are sometimes likely to try the test first to see how they do, and if they don't do well, they decide to enroll in formal training. So we reasoned that those taking computer-based assessments might have less training or training further back in time than those taking paper pencil tests. So what we did was we implemented a optional demographic survey administered to those taking paper pencil tests and those taking computer-based tests to look at the differences in the training that they received. While we were administering the survey, we decided to get some other background information that we hadn't had prior to that on our candidates. So we created a 10-question survey. These are the first 5 questions. What's your current primary job position? How long have you been in how long have you been a lifting equipment operator? In what industry did you gain the majority of your experience? What's the reason you're seeking certification or recertification? At what age did you enter the industry? These were all multiple choice questions with up to 7 different responses for each. What's your highest education level? What's the main type of test prep you received to prepare for this test? How much test prep did you receive in the classroom? How much test prep in the field? And how long before taking this exam did you receive your test preparation? Only the 3 questions in red are the ones of interest for closing this nonconformity, the one having to do with the type of test preparation, the amount of test preparation, and how long since that test preparation, or how long before the exam did they receive that test preparation. My original presentation included slides on all the questions, but in interest of time, I cut those out. We'll save those for another presentation. So there are some limitations to the data. A critical issue here was a bit of the time pressure that we had to close this nonconformity. Again, we had just downloaded some of the data when we went through our annual surveillance this year. They wanted the results now. Since we had the data, they wanted us to get to those results. So we only had a few weeks to examine the data and get to those. So these are only preliminary analyses. Some of the analyses include only results from the paper pencil examinees, and others have data from both computer-based and paper pencil examinees. The reason was that I wanted to look at some of the scores related to those questions. And at this point in time, we only have the score data linked to the paper pencil examinees, but not to the computer-based examinees. In the future, we'll get those linked up and we'll be able to do some more analyses with this. But luckily, we were able to do some analyses and take a look at some of these differences, even given those limitations. And jumping around a bit there. There we go. Okay. Okay, so the first question that that we're going to look at here is the type of no, that's the second question. I'm sorry. There we go. First question is the type of test preparation we received. I wanted to look at some of the score differences. And as we can see, the scores were generally the highest among those who have received some sort of test preparation. So we have here the training course by a third-party training. Here we have a training course by an in-house employer. Here is vocational instruction or a community college, union apprenticeship or program. There were only like 2 examinees that indicated they got their training in military. But these questions over here indicated either self-study or an online program or no formal test preparation. These scores here in general are lower than what we're seeing here. The percentage of people answering these questions, as we can see in this table, computer-based candidates were much more likely to conduct self-study or an online program or no formal test preparation compared to the paper pencil examinees down here. So we had 28% and 15% versus 5% and 3% here. Over here with the formal training courses, you can see a huge difference in this area here with a third-party trainer, where only 23% of those taking computer-based tests had a third-party trainer, whereas 63% of those taking paper pencil tests had a third-party trainer. Here's a graphic representation of that same data. So the ones in orange are those who experienced the paper pencil tests. The ones in blue are those that took the computer-based tests. You can see the grouping up here is pretty significant. A majority of candidates who took paper and pencil tests, at least 75% of them, used a third party or in-house trainer, while with computer-based testing, that percentage up here is much lower. And those who are taking self-study or no formal test preparation constitute 52% of those CBT candidates, and only about 8% of the paper pencil candidates. So those differences are pretty substantial. Next question pertained to how much test preparation folks received. This table shows, and we'll show it to you graphically as well, the computer-based testing candidates were much more likely to receive no test prep. 41% received no formal test prep, whereas only 3% of the paper pencil candidates had no formal test preparation. Paper pencil candidates were much more likely to have some sort of test preparation than those those taking computer-based tests. And graphically, you can see it even more clearly. So the majority of 74.7% of the exam candidates who took the test via paper pencil spent at least 2 to 3 days in formal classroom preparation. In contrast, more than half, or 57.4% of the CBT candidates spent less than 1 day or had no formal test preparation for the exam. Those with no formal test preparation, again, 40.5%. So the results show that examinees who took the test via paper pencil spent more time than CBT candidates in test preparation. And then finally, how long has it been since you've had test prep? Here are the tables. Paper pencil examinees were much more likely to have exam prep less than 1 week prior to testing. As we can see right here, 64% less than 1 week. Computer-based examinees are much more likely to have no formal test preparation, obviously, than those who took paper pencil. So you can see those differences again here, less than 1 week in the orange versus the blue CBT testing. Both of those added together. So 64% received test preparation less than 1 week prior to taking the exam. Almost half the examinees who took the test via CBT prepared for the test at least 5 weeks prior to testing, all the way down to a quarter of those having no formal test preparation. So in general, it appears that examinees who take the test via CBT do not prepare for the exam very soon for the exam or at all, as compared to those who take the test for via paper pencil. So final decision. Evidence, we had evidence that the differences in scores between computer-based and paper pencil-based examinations could be due to the differences in test preparation among the candidates. Therefore, the CBT testing does not provide an unfair disadvantage to candidates. Had we had time to link these scores to the computer-based candidate demographic data, I think our results could have been stronger, because we would have shown larger score differences based on the training. However, in our case, the nonconformity was recommended by the assessors to be closed, so we successfully made our case. And hopefully I kept it short enough that we have time for a coffee break. That's all I have, Grant.
Thanks very much, Bob. Very, very, very interesting. The kind of insight that I'm not sure really is generally shared. And so we certainly appreciate the whole process that you've outlined there. And I hope it's given everybody some kind of insight into just what is involved in maintaining that accreditation, which is so important for OSHA recognition.